everybody. I'm Seth Meyers. This is Late Night. We hope you're doing well. And now, if you don't mind, we're going to get to the news. President Trump arrived today in Beijing for his 2-day state visit, and apparently he's so jet-lagged that he's been sleeping at night and staying awake during meetings. President Trump is set to meet today with Chinese President Xi Jinping, and I'm sure Trump is very relieved he gets to bow instead of shaking hands. That's right, President Trump is set to meet today with Chinese President Xi Jinping and tour the historic Temple of Heaven, which he's actually done a couple of times before, but both times doctors were able to revive him. Too many at McDonald's? Yeah, I'm fine. Before departing yesterday for China, President Trump repeated his claim that Iran is not going to obtain a nuclear weapon and added, quote, "We don't play games." Pretty hard to believe, considering you literally used to have one. It's like Monopoly, except you never go to jail. The New York Times reported yesterday. The New York Times reported yesterday that U.S. intelligence assessments indicate that Iran's military remains much stronger than President Trump claims. Oh, I can explain. He lies. Might want to also check that people's sexiest man alive claim. During an Oval Office event on Monday, President Trump called Democratic lawmakers dumbocrats and added, quote, "because they're dumb." And once again, you know he's explaining it to us because someone had to explain it to him. Somebody in the White House, here's how it went down. Somebody in the White House said Democrats, and he was like, "Why are you saying it like that?" And then they told him, and then 5 minutes later he went, "Oh, I'm gonna use that." According to a new report, the paint job on President Trump's renovation at the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool is uneven and behind schedule because he hired the same people who do his face. FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary resigned yesterday, reportedly over his opposition to the Trump administration's plan to authorize fruit-flavored e-cigarettes. And honestly, I'm surprised a guy named Dr. Marty was opposed to flavored vapes. That sounds like a brand of flavored vapes. The United States Postal Service reportedly considering allowing handguns to be sent through the mail. Oh, sure, after Mother's Day. The New York Times published a profile yesterday on Gen Z high school students who have revived the trend of playing with hacky sacks. That story again, weed's back. According to a new poll, nearly 80% of Americans believe that artificial intelligence will eliminate more jobs than it will create. And keep in mind, that's coming from people who are so old that they answer polls. And finally, according to the Social Security Administration, the most popular boy's name of 2025 was Liam, the most popular girl's name was Olivia, and the most popular last name was Cannon. That was a monologue, everybody! We've got a great show for you tonight. You know him from shows such as The Last of Us, The Mandalorian, Game of Thrones, Narcos, movies like Fantastic Four, and Materialist. He stars in Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu, which is in theaters and IMAX on May 22nd. Pedro Pascal is back, everybody. You know him from Billy on the Street, movies like The Lion King and Bros. His audio memoir, Billy on Billy, is out on May 19th. The very funny Billy Eichner is back, everybody. She is a very funny, multi-talented writer, actress, and producer. You know from her terrific show, Odd Mom Out. Her new movie, Influenced, is out now. Jill Kargman is back as well. Anna Konkle stopped by Family Trips. And if you're looking for another podcast, Strike Force 5 reunited for a 13th episode in honor of the final shows of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. It's a fantastic conversation that focuses on Stephen and what a terrific host and person he is. So give that a listen as well. You guys here at Late Night, we don't always have enough time to cover all of the recent news. So here with the recap is one of our writers, Amber Ruffin, in a segment we call Amber Says What.
You guys, things have been crazy. Okay, so the Michael Jackson biopic came out, and it got bad reviews. And I was like, what? I'm still gonna see it. Then it made a butt ton of money, and I was like, what? I'm definitely gonna see it. But then Janet Jackson was like, I don't like that they made that movie. And I was like, what? Look, I do whatever Janet Jackson tells me to. She says jump, and I say, please don't make me jump. My knee's been bad since I learned the choreography to Rhythm Nation. Then my friend told me that Manosphere influencer, Clavicular, who's all about looks maxing, recently got frame mugged, and I was like, what are the symptoms of a stroke? Because I'm pretty sure you're having one. My friend then took the time to explain to me what all that means. So,
morally, we here at Late Night with Seth Meyers would feel terrible if we were the reason you learned the meaning of nonsense words like looks maxing and frame mobbed. So we're blocking this part out. You're welcome, and enjoy your day.
And that's why he had his YouTube channels taken away. Then King Charles came to the United States, and I was like, what? Why? Why would you come to America now? Haven't you heard what we do to people who come here from other countries? They'll never put me in a detention center. I'm king. You think they won't treat you like an immigrant? They already separated you from one of your children. We're not giving him back. Then I heard that it was the 10th anniversary of Beyonce's Lemonade album, and I was like, what? I was like, what? It hasn't been 10 years.
Amber, I'm afraid it has.
I've been listening to the same album for 10 years?
You have.
Wow. Time really flies when you look the same.
You can't crack it.
Come on, baby. Then I saw a picture of Tracy Ellis Ross in Vogue, and I was like, what? You look so cute. Then I read the caption described her hair as a cloud bob, and I was like, what the is a cloud bob? Do you mean afro? Now, look, I don't have time to explain the implications of looking at an afro and choosing to make up a whiter name for it, so I'll just say it with a look. Then I read that a woman at Trader Joe's claims she found a human finger in her orange juice, and I was like, what? A human finger? Thank goodness. Because that explains why that juice is $25. I thought Trader Joe's was charging extra money for no reason, but it's people. The juice is people. So then, Megan Thee Stallion accused Klay Thompson of cheating on her, and I was like, what? Then she fought back tears during her Broadway performance that same night, and I was like, what? Then I read that her fans immediately started hiring witches on Etsy to curse him for cheating on her. And I was like, what? Now, as soon as I heard that, I hired an Etsy witch to give Seth a cloud bob.
Joke's on you. I like it.
Now that is a cloud bob. Then I read that a tech company made an AI model of Jesus Christ that you can talk to, and I was like, what? Then I read it charges $1.99 a minute to talk to him, and I was like, what? Is this a phone sex hotline or a Jesus hotline? Then I looked at the picture of Jesus, and that might be both. Sexy little savior. Then I heard that there was a new rom-com out called All Is Fair in Love and Mahjong, and I was like, what? A rom-com that's not about a small blonde woman? Sign me up. Then I saw the poster and was like, what? What do you want to bet? They were like, it's called Love and Mahjong, and everyone's Asian, and they were like, great. Then Trump got reelected, and they were like, actually. Then they changed everything, because that's what happened to me when I pitched my movie, All Is Fair in Love and Spades. Then I saw that the Miss Grand Thailand pageant had a viral moment, and I was like, what could it possibly be? Was the woman too beautiful? Was she perhaps too elegant? But then I saw it. What is she competing in? She killed that. People love her, and I see why. She said, to hell with societal norms. I'm gonna do my best impression of Ray Gun from the 2024 Olympics. Then the biggest news of the week happened. Okay, so there's a Bravo show called Summer House, and they had the biggest scandal of all time. And I was like, what? So let me explain it to you.
I'm back to save you more brain space, baby. You're welcome and enjoy your day.
So if you ask me, that bitch had it coming. This has been Amber Says What?
Amber Roman, everybody. We'll be right back with Pedro Pascal. Make it go away now. Make it go away.